music by Nico Muhly and performed by the Tallis Scholars, conducted by Peter Phillips. And you can hear them talking about their wonderful collaboration in just a moment. This podcast episode is brought to you in association with REMA, the European Early Music Network, and the organisers of Early Music Day, which is almost here, as the 21st of March is Early Music Day itself. And as a partner of this international celebration of early music, we invite you to watch a conversation with this year's ambassadors, the recorder virtuosos Lucy Horsch and Sarah Jeffrey. Appointed for the 2026 edition, Lucy and Sarah embody a forward-looking early music scene through their artistic careers, educational work and digital engagement, reflecting the sector's values of sharing and transmission. In the conversation, they look back on their journeys, share their experiences and discuss their vision of early music today. It's broadcast on March the 21st at 12 o'clock, that's Central European time, so 11 o'clock UK time, on REMA's YouTube channel. So to find out more about this celebration of early music, visit earlymusicday.eu. Welcome to the latest Gramophone Podcast. I'm Martin Cullingford, editor of Gramophone, and today it is an absolute pleasure to be in the company of the conductor of one of our era's most acclaimed choral ensembles, Peter Phillips of the Tallis Scholars, and one of the very finest of our day's composers for that genre, Nico Muhly. Welcome to you. The subject of our discussion, the reason for being here, is the very beautiful and, on many occasions throughout, as we shall discuss, powerful and thought-provoking new album on Linn Records, No Resting Place, recordings by the Tallis Scholars of Nico Muhly's music. And first, congratulations on the recording. It's a really wonderful recording.
Very happy with it.
I'd like to start, if I may, with you, Peter. The Tallis Scholars, as its name suggests, was founded to sing Renaissance music, Renaissance polyphony, and this you have done to great acclaim for half a century. And yet, here we are, a contemporary composer who writes music that, to my ear, perfectly draws on the Tallis Scholars' musical skills and heritage alike. So tell me about that step, how and why this project and this partnership, this direction came about.
Well, the thrilling thing about it was discovering that Nico could write for us as well as he does. That was a first, actually. It's been important to us, well, since then, shall we say, to find composers who actually can use the sound that we make. Our sound is very distinctive, but it's not immediately obvious to everyone how it's put together. But it's a particular structure of voices that needs to be understood. And Nico really started to understand it right from the beginning. With Recordare,
That's right, yeah, which is 11 years ago now.
Is it really?
It's so crazy.
Since then, he's written us 5 more pieces, so 6 in total, and they're all on this disc. The disc is an hour long, and it's just conveniently those 6 make about an hour of music.
You don't have to pad it with any secret download.
And you must have been aware of the group for many, many years before this collaboration came about.
Yes, I mean, we're talking about the 80s when I first started listening to it.
Oh, really?
To your music. And when I was a chorister as a kid, and oftentimes there weren't readily available recordings of things that we were singing, especially in suburban Boston or whatever in 1990. And yours are the most readily available recordings. I remember it was probably the Western Wind Masses.
Oh, yes.
That just completely, particularly when you were treble, you don't really know how these things fit into any compositional context or musical context or historical context. But then I remember buying that sort of, forcing my mother to buy me that CD or whatever I did, and my entire mind exploded.
Right.
There's nothing. I mean, that is one of the highlights of Western civilization. Is that disc is so great.
Okay.
Not just because how great it is from you, but also from just musically. We're like, oh, there's a tune. Oh, it's being extended. Oh, it goes through the whole creed. Oh, there's everything is going on. I remember just being addicted to that sonically.
Yeah.
You were a boy chorister.
I was, yeah.
Where?
In Providence, Rhode Island.
Oh, yes.
And we had my choir master, Mark Johnson, who's called it, had this very, when I say the word progressive, 16th century focused. But for America at that time, nobody was doing that much kind of early music.
I asked this question because it's been clear to me all along that you know how to write for voices, but especially for our voices. So we're a 10-voice ensemble. To hear 10 voices clearly is really something special, and it would have taken a lot of training. And you as a boy chorister explains quite a bit of it, and they're very singable, your lines. That's why we like them.
Well, individual, that's the thing that makes me crazy about it's like, if you're going to write for voices, they have to be singable, and they have to be lines, and not just kind of block chords. And one of the things I whenever I use sort of blocky chords in the things I've written for you, they're always kind of hymn-like, as simple as humanly possible. So for instance, in Rough Notes, it's like we took risks. We took risks.
We just recorded that the other on video.
So we mentioned a number of the works on the album. It opens with The Glorious Creature, but actually let's start with Ricordare Domine. What was it like to find yourself writing for the group, and how did it affect what you did musically in terms of just knowing the sound and Peter's approach and something distinct about the group?
I suppose with that piece, what I was thinking about was, I obviously listened to every single thing he'd ever recorded. I was thinking about unspooling and spooling lines and things that kind of cascade down. And whenever I hear Complicated Polyphony, especially with 10 parts, I always feel that there's a kind of thread, is the kind of image in my mind. And so I thought, all right, with Ricordare, the point of Lamentations is the end of which is Jerusalem. There's this kind of refrain. And so I thought, okay, if I can make the whole thing be very abstract at the start, so from the incipit on, very kind of austere and, I want to say unforgiving, but austere is the word I'd use. And then when you get to the Jerusalem kind of invocation, just have it just be endless lines unfurling. And that's really that was the shape that I drew.
I would say that Jerusalem section, where
there's the E flat,
four sopranos, that was where you learned how to do that.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly.
And it's crucial.
Yeah.
And immensely beautiful.
It is. I was re-listening the other day just in preparation for this experience. It's really good. I was really happy with it.
It's fantastic.
And I remember you liking it, but I also remember the band liking it. The singers were really into it.
It's the fourth soprano, actually, when she finally comes in as a solo voice, that you realize how strong this is, how well written, how well conceived.
It took a minute to figure out, because again, it's like having an ensemble that top focused.
Yes,
you don't want to reveal the secret too early. It's and that in this body of work, that was my main concern. Like, forget everyone else. Just what do you do with these four women? It's like, what's happening?
No, and this is a really, really beautiful moment. And the fact that they sort of start exposed and it all just builds up.
Yeah,
I love your description of, you kind of don't want to reveal that too much, because actually it does feel like there's a moment in that work where you then reach that recent moment. It just feels beautiful, transcendent.
And but weirdly, in No Resting Place, that was the other thing which is of course another setting of the Lamentations. I was so nervous when I started writing it. I thought, whatever I do, I have to make sure that the entry to the Jerusalem moment is like as proper as it can be. And I remember I was texting, it was like my birthday however many years ago, and I remember you were like, I got it, oh my god, the Jerusalem entrance is amazing. And I thought, well, finally I've done it. It's like, if you approve of sneaking in that way.
I mean, let's we could go forward to that.
No, we can also go backwards.
No, but actually I was talking about Lamentations, because that's a fascinating work, because that's where you take the Lamentations, then you work in diary entries and other pieces of contemporary writing about the experience of the Windrush generation. Tell me about how that project came about.
Oh, we were talking about, let's do more Lamentations.
Yeah.
And I was thinking,
with the letters.
Of course. Yeah,
obviously.
Aleph, Beth. Yeah, exactly.
There are 5 sections to this big piece, and each of the 5 sections starts with a Hebrew letter, which a gift to a composer. They were in the Renaissance period. I mean,
exactly.
This is where Palestrina really could do what he wanted.
And the Hebrew letters are amazing because it's pure abstraction.
Yeah.
Right. There's no
meaning.
There's no meaning. There's no reason for it to be there. It's just there.
Yeah.
And so, and you could sit it, composers, you could just get rid of it and just go right into the text. But the composers were greedy. And no, I'm going to set this thing. And, I think if you think about even Couperin, the letters are what you remember. You know what I mean? Like, I could probably sing for you most of the Couperin Tenebrae right now, but like the letters are where I would hang my coat.
Not now.
Yes, exactly. So we were thinking about just the Lamentations. I thought, well, and reading the newspaper at that time, this is everything in Lamentations was being said in the newspaper by someone else.
Yeah. You commissioned Rose Mallet, the Bishop of Croydon.
That's right, Rosemary Mallet. Exactly. Well, I asked a bunch of people, because that was something she'd already said. but I just asked a bunch of people so you have David Lammy and things from The Guardian and Rosemary Mallett, just kind of single sentences, or just completely the same as what you find in the Lamentations.
Was she a Windrush person?
Her parents.
I see.
And it's also, it's so uncomfortable to talk about because it's,
Yeah.
but it's exactly what we're doing with the states now too, where it's like stateless people, where you see people who were either naturalized or who were born in the States but with complicated passports, and it's really, when I say born with complicated passports, that's kind of what often you're talking about in the Lamentations, is this idea of statelessness.
It's become very relevant.
It has become very relevant
since it was written and recorded.
Yes, no, exactly.
More relevant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the main thing that I thought that I could do was, instead of having those things feel like interjections that were random, was to connect them in a way where, so you have the Hebrew letter, right, which is this long, extended idea, and then you have the Latin text, and then you have the English text, which finishes with some version of the Hebrew letter on the same English text. So essentially, it's bringing the contemporary text backwards, in a sense, and saying, here it belongs in this context. So it's in no way an introduction. It's like an embrace of, by saying, the same music on, for instance, the letter Beth, right? It's just this D major scale. And then, you have the Latin text, and then you have suddenly this text being, when my dad died, we were going through his things, and he had all these diaries, a million diaries, and all they said was gray, 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 gray. And so that happens, and then the word gray is picked up by everybody in 10 parts on the same music as Beth.
Right, okay.
So you end up with this kind of, not just resonance, but insistence that these things are the same.
He had a great stack of these, so we had a look at them, and it would literally just say, one day, gray, next day,
Yeah, I mean, I found within what ultimately is a very sad and tragic story, quite a deeply moving sense of the kind of a gift of and love and comfort to the people involved. And I thought that point you mentioned about the word grey, and yet somehow you give it sort of such radiance and luminescence because someone remembering their father and their experiences.
Exactly.
Yep. Really moving.
Oh, thank you. I mean, that's. I mean, if you set Lamentations, they should probably be moving. I think that is.
Well, you have to do it really badly not to make it.
Yeah. Well, quite. Yeah. But it is, and for me, that piece was both me figuring out how to really write for them. I mean, I'd figured it out, but really like getting how to make an almost dramatic context.
Can I just go through the history of this? Because I think this ability, this knowledge came, first of all, with Record. That was the first piece, and the four sopranos we talked about. But then we went on to Marrow, which is a very short little piece, also scored just right. But it's a sort of really...
It's weird and gnarly and abstract.
Gnarly, yes.
You described, Nico, in the notes as the most abstract music on the album. Is that something that you felt performing it?
Yeah. Not really. I didn't find that. I mean, I don't know what abstraction is, really. As long as people aren't being fabricated, then I'm happy.
I don't know what abstraction is. Right? I think you a t-shirt that says that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right, you know it when you see it, exactly.
So now it's a setting of Psalm 63. So
yes, it was part of a Psalms project, actually.
At Lincoln Center, wasn't it?
It was the Dutch Chamber, the Nederlands Kamerkoor was behind it.
Right.
And we did it all over the world. We did it 4 times. But anyway, it was a Psalms project. But just to go on with that history, I'll leave out, there's the big piece we've been discussing, and it ends, I think, with Glorious Creature.
Yes, which is a year ago, too.
Well, we pretty well sight read it in public.
That's right.
At our 50th anniversary party, which you were at, Martin. And that piece has really got into me. It's
really
astonishing.
It's really good.
I don't know whether you feel you've matured the style in some way, but it's really something to do. And that sort of bubbling 10-voice texture that's just waiting to burst out. Yeah. It's so...
I mean, that was also, having done No Resting Place, something about this album is that it's a lot of downers. And I remember when you were having your anniversary of existing, I thought, what am I going to write them? Like another set of lamentations, like this, Yod or something. So I thought, let's really go for it.
Yeah.
And to write something really joyful.
Yeah. It is. It's a 10-minute work, words by Thomas Johann. Sorry. And it, as you described, it sort of starts, just grows and grows increasingly more ambitiously.
But it's middle C. It starts on middle C. That's
Everyone's singing middle C.
every single person. That's exactly. And the idea was, the craziness of that text is that it sort of forces a relationship between the natural world and the soul in a way that is totally crazy. And it also does this camera move, essentially, from this gigantic view of the world right down into the skin and the motes of dust in the air, and it's all this tiny invisible information, which to me, again, it's like via Four Sopranos. What are you going to do? Like, that's what you do.
Well, you build up to it because there's a sequence there, beautiful harmonic sequence. I wonder how that came out of the dust and the motes and the.
So weirdly, when I read the text, I thought, what I'm going to challenge myself to do, because now I'm in a position where I was desperate to see what other things I could make for them. The idea of microscopic text, where literally it's like we're sitting at a table now for the listeners, and every corner of the paper and every idea on the cup, and the idea for me was to make that feel quite chromatic. You get all 12 notes in that.
I haven't counted.
I just about did. My brain shuts down after 11. But yeah, it's like it's a very chromatic piece of information. And the idea for me was that then once you know that that's going to be very chromatic, that everything else can obey other scales. So you have a sort of slightly kind of Balinese scale at the beginning, and then at the end you have there are a lot of things at play, but the chromaticism of that moment is what sort of unlocked it for me.
Yeah, no, because the text itself is about the sun, bright, brilliant, and radiant, and powerful, but actually how much more powerful is the impact and potential and radiance of the soul, that tiny. And so you've gone from large to small, but then the music then takes that, as I think Johann is talking about that, it takes it from large to even bigger, right? We can grasp, and it's done it beautifully.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And what's also fun about that piece is you have like just the first page of it. I thought, again, because it was your anniversary, let's have everyone do the thing. So you start with middle C and then you just explode into all these different chords. It's very exciting.
And it happens again and again.
And then, by the way, at the end, one more time.
And you have a sort of chorale section, which you were talking about earlier. Not just counterpoint. There's a sort of caudal chorale style, which is then encased in
the counterpoint.
Counterpoint.
That's it sounds like an Anglican chant psalm situation.
It's quite hard to get that to sound through the teeming detail, I just would point out. But we did our best.
No, it's good. Well, in that case, I imagine that there's this kind of, again, sort of solemn chant that just moves through. It's like a vessel that moves through all the polyphony and then kind of is subsumed by it. But it's tricky. But Johann, it's so crazy to me that more people don't set it. If any composers are listening, just set it. It's the best. Or actually don't.
This one is the...
let me die first.
Peter, when preparing this work, are there meaningful comparisons to be drawn between how you would approach predecessors of Nico's from the 16th century, for example? I mean, is it a similar process, or does it feel very different? Or actually, does that not make any sense to ask as a question?
Well, I'm rather bad at sitting at a piano and score reading and getting any idea. So even when I've got a piece of Palestrina I don't know, or Eton choir book, that's the real challenge. I can't just imagine. I can't play these things. Even if I was a really good pianist, I wouldn't be able to play Eton choir book piece or your music. So I looked through it. Obviously, I looked for the danger points that one knows all about, where people are going to breathe, who's going to sing the low notes that no one wants to sing, this sort of thing. And then I just put it into rehearsal, and my people are very, very quick. They know their trade so well. It's astonishing how quickly it comes together.
This is the thing I'm doing is harder than Brown.
Ah, God. And nothing is much greater than Brown, I think.
Brown is, I mean, anyone listening, just stop what you're doing and listening. And just listen to Brown. But Brown
The
is
thing about
really...
Brown is he's not obvious. He's a mystical composer. The meaning has to be sought out. You won't get it first time through. And of course, that's difficult for the singers as well. I mean, they don't see the point necessarily straight. They get the notes right, but we've got the atmosphere. Brown's all about atmosphere.
And it is that crazy music where you have, what feels like 4,000 parts and then 2 parts for like 5 minutes, and then 7 parts and then 1,000,000 parts and then 1 part. It's so
You've
crazy.
sort of done that.
That's
in that period.
That's the model. Yeah, that's the model.
I see.
Thinking about what is it? O Maria Salvatore. I mean,
Yes.
like this crazy marionette that go on for 45 minutes, and you can't believe how beautiful they are. But the moments are structured so unlike any other music.
You never mentioned that before.
No,
The Eton Crowbrook style was at the back of what you were thinking.
Oh, it totally was. And the idea in
That brings us to the Turgis Magnificat.
the churches, yeah, exactly. No, but I was just thinking about in No Resting Place. I, in my mind, insisted there should be moments where it's just 2 parts, and it's hard running for 2 parts with it to have, just the tenor and bass moment. And
Yeah, no, that's right.
in Viazzi.
And is it hard? I mean, it sounds quite natural. The Eton Choirbook style is really hard in 2 parts because there's nothing to rely on.
There's nothing. Well, exactly.
It's sort of,
But in a weird way, for me, the Lamentations, what was helpful is that oftentimes harmonically, the idea is that you don't know where the ground is. Like, if you don't know where, the metaphor I always use is that if you're in a strange house and you don't know when the last stair is, if you're walking down a flight of stairs and you're not sure, is that the floor, is that the last stair? And there's always the sense of kind of not quite knowing what's happening. I don't feel that way necessarily with Brown, but there is a sense when there are 2 voices, you don't know which way they're going to expand.
yeah.
Okay, now on the train back and listen to so much Brown.
What I really love detecting here is just a sheer shared love and understanding of the continuity of this musical tradition, and how you both clearly have such a deep affection and understanding of the past and present. And
No, as we build that up together, really. It's been really nice journey, if that's the word for it.
yeah,
It's been going on for 11 years.
Yeah, 11 years.
That's why his music fits so well in our programs, actually. It's not just that it's unaccompanied and has a sort of religious or
The aroma of religion.
It's just that there's no gear change, as it were, going from Palestrina to Nico to Lassus. It flows really nicely.
That's, I mean, that this is the biggest compliment you could get. It's like, and when I was 10 years old as a chorister, imagining that this would be me 30 some years later. It's like,
no, it's extraordinary. And is there sort of much discussion either prior to you writing or when the score has been written? How does that work? Do you set parameters or desires, and then when you file the score and hand it over or
File.
I mean, is there then more conversation after that about?
Well, I honestly, I tend to trust people. I mean, I trust the singers implicitly.
Yeah.
I don't ever tell them really what to do. I mean, they know better than I do, and you know better than I do. Within very loose parameters. Obviously, I mean, a squeaky gate piece wasn't going to work, but
we haven't really, I feel like if you know how to write music, there doesn't need to be too much conversation about it.
I just let him go. I mean, and you chose the text in every case, I think.
I chose text in every case. That for me, that choosing the text is the trick, and then also making sure that you're setting it so that here's a provocation. With a lot of polyphony, the text vanishes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're in a state of abstraction.
Yeah. Right.
And even if you're in 2 voices or whatever, if they again thinking about Brown
Or Lassus.
or Lassus, exactly, or Palestrina.
Yeah.
And I was always concerned with choosing a text that could bear the weight of simple recitation and also pure abstraction of 10-part polyphony. And that to me is the scariest thing. Once I'm writing the notes, it's fine. Okay. But the choice of text is a
And I didn't want madrigals or anything to do
Nor
with the
was I
style.
going to give you madrigals. I feel like
That overemphasis on the text.
right. Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
every tiny possible hidden meaning
Yeah, yeah.
has to be expressed a million times and talked about for hours in rehearsal. I just can't bear it.
No, you've made that one recording of madrigals, right?
Yes, we did.
A million years ago.
Yes.
Which I have.
Well,
and it's very fa la la and daring do and whatever. I bought it. I took a bus to Boston and bought it on purpose with cash. Yeah,
good for you. Wow.
But I'm very glad. I'm very glad that's not.
So the moments don't happen anymore, so people just download them or stream them. You won't have that sort of moment of remembrance of the journey and carrying away in a bag.
At some point, when I go to my parents' house, I'm gonna find that Western Wind brass disc.
Yes.
I need to actually I'm desperate to actually locate it because it was the first one that I bought. And
Was it a black vinyl?
No, it was an
Was it
actual
a CD?
CD. Yeah, so it was just when CDs were happening.
The Madrigal disc was the first ever.
Tallis
With
Scholars.
digital.
Amazing.
It was recorded in 1983, and in those days the
When I was
column
2, by the way.
was really simple. We had to
CD
wind up the digital machine before we could do a text.
Is it a sort of juxtaposition winding up a digital machine?
Well, it was a bit like that. It was, yeah.
It was you and Trev with a crank. It's just kind of or like those old organs where you had to like descend.
Yes. Yes.
I would also add, knowing that you never work with accompaniment, that you never work with the organ,
Hardly.
it really changes what kind of music you write
Right.
in a weird way, and not just like piece by piece, but knowing that all the sugar and all the starch has to be made by voices
Yeah.
in a way that you can't with howls or something.
And I also, the other evening, you gave a very interesting answer, which might be of interest here, that when you're writing music, it seems to me you make quite a distinction between vocal music and the purely instrumental music you write. Because you did compartmentalize, you said, the two activities.
Well, I feel like for me it's text based
Yeah.
is one big difference, and the other thing is that when you're writing for voices, especially in this context, it's about line and it's about
Yes.
it. Right? It's a sort of linearity is the currency that you have to spend. There's so few pieces for voices, unaccompanied voices, where you can kind of get away with linearity and texture and what in boring composer talk it's like verticality, harmonic information, and bizarrely 16th century music actually does this. And thinking about Bird, I mean, we were talking before, I mean, Civitas being the best example, where it's a piece that is about it's just wonderful polyphony, but then you have these verticalities, Zion, Deserta, right? And there's nothing like that in the history of time, right? Is having all these moving parts and then just this sort of G major, depending on
Just amazing.
amazing. And I remember singing that music where it's almost like you're in a sort of polyphony space, and then you're sent to this kind of crucible of harmony where you get to these radiant chords, out of which then a different polyphony emerges, right? Where suddenly it's all about rising fifths and descending fifths, and suddenly it's about, and again on the word Jerusalem.
Yes,
It's there, and Bert knew. I mean, he knew it was up. There's something about going in and out of that awareness that for me, I wouldn't do in instrumental music. Because in instrumental music, you can do all manner of things that don't happen in tradition, which again, it's like the luxury of being me. It's being able to do both.
It's sort of a discipline and a freedom in a way. It gives you limitations what you can do, but on the other hand, you then also just have this extraordinary choir that you can
Right.
But it's still melody, right? When you're writing a piano piece or an organ piece, it's going to be melody.
It's not necessarily not. I mean, sometimes it's not though. Like with orchestra music, sometimes I'm interested in shape and like way more abstract. I mean, Stravinsky being an interesting example where Stravinsky was someone where I think if you put on a set of goggles and only listened for line or only listened for harmony or only listened for texture, it still works. Yeah. That for me is like that's the kind of goal, right? But when I'm writing orchestra music now, I'm not quite at like, here's a great tune, here's the fun stuff we're going to do with it. I'm still in kind of, here's a great texture and here's all the kind of sparkly bits.
So it's construction as well, overall.
Yeah, it's construction and it's...
When you start, you've got the whole thing, like Mozart obviously did.
Yeah,
you have the whole piece.
It's a shape, yeah.
A shape when you start.
Yeah. It's a shape and a structure.
That's very special.
But it is with vocal music, for instance, were I to write you a piece with no words, which I'm not sure that I would ever do, that would actually be really daunting. Like, I'm not sure what.
Well, you did the letters.
Well, exactly. But as you recall, I had to force myself to think about the letters in a different context. So I wrote the letters knowing that they would have, being the Hebrew letters, knowing that they would then bear the weight of the modern English texts.
Yeah.
The letters are so good. It's, I mean, not mine, but just in general, it's like, it's
That's
so
always,
and you could tell with composers, you could tell
real composers.
that they were like,
just
yes, exactly. I mean, Cooper, it's just, I was listening to them the other day just randomly, but the Hebrew letters are, again, there's nothing like it in liturgy where the composer is allowed, and there's sort of jokes about, big kind of engraved capital letters at the beginnings of illuminated manuscripts. You'll have like a little rabbit with like a helmet and like a puffin and whatever and things spinning around. But for composers, can you imagine? It's like 1523, everyone's dying, it's totally miserable, but you get to set these Hebrew letters.
Now, one word we haven't really talked about, because it does draw on some of the interesting things we've talked about, rough notes, because that's quite an unusual work. That's the setting of the words of Scott in the Antarctic, aware that he's dying, or they're going to die as time moves on, in this place of hostility, but also strange beauty. And on the one hand, that feels very different to much of what we've been talking about. But on the other hand, if you compare that to the words in Psalms or Lamentations, again, it's a reflection on situation, on fear, on hope, but it's also telling a story using just an accompanied choir, which again, obviously, when you're writing an opera, for example, you have all these great forces, but that's here it's distilled into this extraordinary 10-minute piece.
So it's the piece we sing most of yours.
It's good.
Yeah, there's no particular reason, but it's just,
well, it's also 10 minutes and it
10 minutes is good.
Well, you say no particular reason, but therefore you must have detected your resonance with an audience.
Yes, they love it. And it also fits with other texts, more of the Lamentations type.
It fits more than the actual Lamentations I've set for you.
In a way. It's so moving. I mean, the story itself
it's crazy.
It is just completely engrossing.
When we put this together, I remember sending you these texts, and they're really dark. I mean, basically the texts are in two parts, sort of, where one is a couple months before they all died, where he describes seeing the
aurora,
the aurora, the southern lights, I suppose it would have been, and then. And he just says, it went from one end to the other of the sky. It's crazy. And then the last diary entry, which is amazing, is
just before he died.
Just before, I mean, it was like that day.
He couldn't write anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
You said that bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is, and a million unbelievably beautiful sentences. Like, we took risks, we knew we took them, and when I was again going through these diaries, and the sentence, these rough notes and our dead bodies must tell the tale. You think, well, that's the title, not Dead Bodies, Rough Notes, obviously. But it's such a good title, and it's so crazy, the idea that the luxury, that's not quite what I mean, of writing your own, of knowing you're going to die and having a pen and paper and nothing else, basically, because it seemed like other people had already died, right?
They had. He was more or less the last to survive.
Yeah,
I think.
Which is so crazy.
I mean, it's something extraordinarily horrific, extraordinary thing to think about. And as a group, when you sing that and you're aware of the place it holds in a concert, it is very different to so much of what else you sing, not just in terms of the music, but also in terms of it being a 10-minute story of an Figaro, fight of our time.
Well, it's a very refreshing addition to what we can do. Well, all right.
It's sort of an ice cube on there.
But it follows on in the way I've described, and then it just gives another perspective to polyphony, and it's very welcome.
Yeah. And moments of sort of starkness of delivering very upfront prose, but then moments of, you described, sort of almost poetic reflection.
It's good, that, isn't it? I mean, because the words are crucial and very moving, but the music is there just as strongly, and that's what we like. That's what we do normally, is have what we're almost calling abstract music.
Almost. And then that's actually a bit of an interesting overarching idea here, which is that, I'm not writing madrigals. So it's not word, I'm not like painting the words.
No, exactly.
However, in rough notes, how do you make the sound of the lights? And for me, it was using very tiny kind of glissandi and very, very subtle, more contemporary techniques. But then also the difference between everyone singing one note and then really radiating out into this kind of unstable and beautiful kind of texture, which again comes, in my mind, comes from Brown. It comes from those moments where you in 15th and 16th century music where you've had two people singing and then suddenly it's like you've opened a door into this whole other chroma universe.
Another description of an unstable, beautiful texture, because obviously you as performers, you need to know exactly, it needs to be stable for you. You need to know exactly what you're doing to create instability with perfection, with stability, with technical skill.
It's very good that, because it's quite right. And in order to create instability, we've got to get the rhythms so slick. If it's slightly out and actually unstable, nothing works.
The rhythms are really funny because I remember there are some moments where you're like, so this quintuplet, what are we going to do?
Oh my God. As a conductor, you have given me a few challenges. It's the dotted quavers, 4 dotted quintade. What am I supposed to do with that?
Just exist and just live in the moment.
Well, I do. I've got used to it.
One of the scariest parts of rough notes is when they say we took risks, we knew we took them, and it's the most rhythmically complicated part where Peter has to really kind of bear down. Exactly. And every time they do it, I always see them afterwards being like, we took risks.
The singers love that phrase. It's often quoted out of context.
I should make you a t-shirt of that too. I have so many t-shirts I have to make.
We sure is.
Can I just ask you about, in this context, prosperity, which is the one piece I think we haven't referred.
No, so this is a birthday. See,
I'm not
a toast.
It was a wonderful present, but they're the words you've chosen. Those words really nicely.
So that
Let's just set the scene. So this was a secret present to mark a 70th birthday on a boat, knowing that it has to be something that's going to grab a moment, have some words which actually have a sort of longer resonance in that moment. That must be quite interesting.
Well, it's interesting. Like, I'm interested in setting a text not about congratulations on being old. It's one of the Psalms. It's one of the Psalms, yeah. But it's in the Wycliffe translation, which that's right. Yeah, it's totally one of the Psalms. And I didn't want to write something being, marking time or saying, well done being well done being ancient. But the idea of what comes after, and the idea of
a top C.
Yeah, well, exactly. the idea of planting things and things that grow and things that exist, nice. and the sort of the way that nature both can sort of embrace and then reproduce.
But it's the same ability to make the words and the music equally important, and not just let the words
go away. Yeah, exactly.
It's what so many composers have done since then, since the Renaissance period.
I was going to say, since the 1600s.
Purcell and Britten, and where the words are absolutely crucial. I mean, the music doesn't exist without the words.
But with Prosperity, what was fun was we had 1 second of rehearsal in in St. Mary.
I wasn't. That is right.
No, of course you weren't there. But
no, that's right.
In that little church in the Strand, I had to conduct it, which was outrageous, and it was so fun because I wrote it, and then forgot that I was sort of in charge of it, and conducting it was so fun because
They're so good.
they're so good. That's really
That's the fun of it.
That's the fun of it, is they're so good. And it was, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was like driving a really, really nice car for the first time in your life.
Right.
You know, where you're like, oh, this is, and you just gonna give a downbeat, and then all this amazing stuff happens. But then also I knew that performing on a boat, I wasn't gonna write some subtle little thing. It was great. It was really fun. But then we hadn't thought about anything, so we rehearsed it in, I don't know, 8 minutes. You know, it's a 90-second piece, however long it is. And then we were running down the hill, like past the temple, like, you know, shoving tourists over. Like Indiana Jones rolled onto the boat. You were in like your kurta or
I
whatever.
was immaculately dressed.
Anyway, and then during the performance, not quite the word, there's video of this, you can confirm this. Guy cutting the tenor had to hold, because I was like, oh, we don't have a music stand, and I have to conduct, and I don't really know, because it's in a bunch of different time signatures, so he had to kneel in front of me like some bizarre ritual, holding my iPad.
There's something very, very ancient and modern about that.
Yeah, as we were sort of by the O2, you kind of turning around.
But no, it's a lovely thing to include, and it feels like it sort of captures the moment of the partnership. And just a few sort of final reflections. It's very clear there's a huge amount of trust that must be built up by you for Nico, that you're trusting him to choose the text, knowing that he's going to give you something that will be part of your group's repertoire for a long period of time. And that's an extraordinary thing to, because normally you can go through hundreds and hundreds of thousands of works of the past, choose the ones that you feel are right, you want to do. But this is the complete opposite.
Well, we're starting from scratch, and which with Palestrina and Tallis we weren't. But as it turns out, Nico's music has become as essential to us as the music of Tallis and Palestrina.
Yeah. Best thing I've ever heard.
That's true.
Yeah. And can you hear something of your group's signature sound in this music?
Crucially, that was the whole point. I've commissioned other people who just don't get it. They don't. It's not that they don't take the trouble to learn how that sound is put together. And it's a very special construction of people and sounds that produce the eventual product. And Nico got it almost straight away.
Just about. But it is, I mean, it's also, as a composer, if someone gave you the assignment, not knowing your body of work, if someone said to you at conservatory, if you were a 22-year-old conservatoire student and somebody said, write a piece that's SSSS AATT baritone bass, you would think, well, that's a weird ass thing. Like, then immediately what you do is you start thinking SATB.
That's
right.
That's the default setting, which I absolutely don't want.
No, exactly. So you think SATB, or you think purely abstract, like, oh, this is a weird orchestra, and it's not. It's a sound that's so rooted in older practice, but also it's such a specialty instrument to have that many voices and to have it weighted in that way. It's almost like, it's like looking at not a bottle, but it's like looking at a vessel that has very unexpected proportions to have that much sound up top.
And to be honest, I wanted to commission something that would last. And I thought a special sound for a special group that has a history and will have a history, I hope, a legacy, as it were, that would ensure that these pieces go into the future. And the alternative is to commission someone on SATB and it never gets a second performance because it's not special.
Or it gets 8,000 performances, but not by you.
That's right. Yes. So I can instance one or two.
I was going to say, I've been at those premieres.
Yeah.
But it is curious, because what's great about this disc is that it's a record of 11 years of figuring out this, not just this relationship, but also figuring out how to use the sound and how to use these 10 voices in a way that belongs to their tradition and that is completely part of the kind of water flow of what it is that you
start with Eton Crowber.
Yeah, that's sort of
it was formed up basically on the Eton Crowber and the Taverner, the music that immediately followed. Eton Crowber, Brown, Cornish.
Cornish.
I know. But that's where you got it. And
yeah, no, that's right. That's
crucial discovery or instinctive discovery, I think.
And that's why the children, like, whenever if anyone's listening to this and you have kids, just play them woefully arrayed.
Oh, by Cornish.
By Cornish, of course, are you crazy?
Well, there's a setting by Brown, actually.
There's also, but the Cornish woefully arrayed is so unreal. It's so fabulous. And I remember that I didn't, because you recorded that in the
years ago,
like a million years ago. I bought that
in the 80s.
I bought that probably when I was already in university, but it's just amazing music. And what's also amazing about it is, so I went to like as fancy a conservatoire as you can go to. Nobody was thinking about teaching this. There was nowhere to hear it. There's one or two places in New York where you can hear that music being performed.
Did you go to the Juilliard?
I was Juilliard, yep. Exactly. But what are you, crazy? You think Milton Babbitt was going to teach me
No. We're doing something new, actually.
No, yeah, it's quite, yeah.
I mean, it's building up, but it's essentially new.
It's a thing that was definitely not on offer.
It was not part of any curriculum that I ever came across.
And no, it wouldn't have been. And that's what's so crazy about
the singing of it, how it was written, the history of it, and how to sing it. And also the fact that these manuscripts are complicated. Yes. Right? It's not just... Yes, you're on the hands of the scholars there. You're right. The manuscripts are not... It's not clear what's really going on. Or for instance, if you go into a room of people who are experts in this, music of the 15th and 16th century, and just say the name of one piece and then leave, they'll argue for 7 days? And we were talking about Ficta for 45 minutes just before the E sharp and bird. It's like, that's quite late. No, but it is this crazy thing where this tradition exists so far outside of the pedagogic universe that most composers are participating in, especially in America. Yeah. And if you meet someone who knows anything about it, you have to just go out to dinner, 5 nights a week.
It seems to me that this collaboration is almost a perfect distillation of something you've talked about throughout your career, just the influence of Anglican choral music and tradition, and how it's informed your contemporary works. And actually working with Peter and the Tallis Scholars.
No, it's a treat, but it's...
Yeah. Well, just a reminder that Very Resting Place, music by Nico Muhly, recorded by the Tallis Scholars, is available now from Linn Records. Peter Phillips, Nico Muhly, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you for downloading this edition of the Gramophone Podcast. If you've enjoyed it, we'd be hugely grateful if you could leave a rating or a review, hit the subscribe button, or simply tell your friends about our work. And if you want to explore classical music in even greater depth with Gramophone, then we produce a monthly magazine packed full of interviews, features and reviews, as well as a website with even more exciting classical coverage to explore and enjoy. And all listeners to this podcast can get a 20% discount off any subscription package by visiting gramophone.co.uk/subscribe and entering the code podcast20 at the checkout. And thank you too to the sponsors of this podcast, REMA, the European Early Music Network, and the organisers of Early Music Day, which takes place this very weekend, March the 21st. And you can find out all about it at earlymusicday.eu.